off the walls of my sister Chloe's brand new mansion. You'll never own a home like your sister's, Emily. Just accept it. My dad nodded in silent agreement, taking a sip of his wine, while Chloe smirked and added, "You're just jealous, right? Not everyone is built for success." They all thought I was the broke, struggling contractor daughter who could barely afford rent. I didn't argue. I just smiled, took the disrespect, and went back to work. But a week later, I invited Chloe over for tea. The second she walked into the entryway, the smug smile completely vanished from her face. She turned pale, her hands started shaking, and she immediately pulled out her phone, calling our mom screaming, "You need to get here, now." They thought they had me figured out. They had no idea. My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old, and for the past 10 years, I've made my living as an independent contractor, doing everything from framing houses to custom finished carpentry. If you looked at me in my dusty work boots and tool belt, you'd never guess I was related to the people standing in the sleek, ultra-modern kitchen of my family's dreams. That kitchen belonged to my younger sister, Chloe, the family's golden child. She had recently landed a corporate executive role and immediately bought a $2 million suburban estate to cement her status. To celebrate, she hosted a lavish housewarming dinner. I had spent a grueling 12-hour day on a job site before driving over, arriving tired and looking out of place among the pristine marble and glass. Instead of welcoming me, my family used the evening as an opportunity to remind me of my place in the hierarchy. My mom looked around Chloe's massive space, turned to me, and laughed. "You'll never own a home like your sister's, Emily. Just accept it." My dad nodded in silent agreement, swirling his expensive wine. Chloe just smirked, leaning against the counter. "You're just jealous, right? Not everyone is built for high-end success." Before I tell you how their jaws dropped, take a second to hit the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I just smiled, held my peace, and let them think they'd won. The main reason my family treated me like a second-class citizen was the elaborate misdirection I'd been playing for years. To them, I was struggling. I drove a beat-up, dented pickup truck with ladders strapped to the back, lived in a tiny, rented apartment on the edge of town, and wore clothes stained with paint and sawdust. Whenever Mom asked where all my money went, I always gave the same vague answer. "Oh, just buying supplies and paying off old bills." They assumed I was pouring cash down a drain, barely keeping my head above water while Chloe climbed the corporate ladder. What they didn't know, what I never told them, was that I had been quietly orchestrating a massive, high-end real estate project for the past 2 solid years. While Chloe was saving up a down payment for her generic, mass-produced suburban mansion, I used my savings to purchase a historic, heavily distressed architectural estate in the city's most exclusive historic district. Because it was completely run down and deemed an eyesore, I managed to buy it for dirt cheap at an estate auction. Every single weekend, and every late night after finishing my regular client jobs, I lived at that historic property. I didn't need to hire expensive designers or teams of laborers like Chloe did. I possessed the skills, the tools, and the professional connections to do the heavy lifting myself. I meticulously restored the hand-carved molding, laid down premium herringbone oak flooring, and modernized the entire plumbing and electrical infrastructure. While Chloe's house looked like every other sterile, white box mansion on her block, I was building an absolute masterpiece with my own 2 hands. They thought I was left behind, completely blind to the fact that I was actually miles ahead. Exactly 1 week after the disastrous housewarming dinner, my historic project was officially complete. The last coat of varnish had dried on the grand staircase, and the custom brass light fixtures were finally glowing. I decided the time had come to host a small tea gathering. I sent a casual text to Chloe, giving her the address and telling her I wanted to show her a new space I'd been working on. True to form, Chloe assumed I had rented a tiny, cramped office space or moved into a cheap fixer-upper rental. She texted back a patronizing emoji and agreed to drop by on her way to a corporate meeting. When her shiny luxury car pulled up to the curb, I was waiting behind the massive, hand-carved mahogany front doors. I watched through the leaded glass as she stepped out, looking up at the imposing stone facade with a look of pure bewilderment. She clearly thought she had the wrong address. But as she walked up the stone steps, I swung the heavy doors open, inviting her into the sprawling entryway. The smug, superior smile completely vanished from Chloe's face the second she crossed the threshold. She stood frozen on the premium marble inlay, her eyes darting from the soaring 12-foot ceilings to the immaculate, custom woodwork that lined the grand hallway. The sheer historic luxury blew her generic, cookie-cutter mansion completely out of the water. She turned pale, her hands visibly started shaking, and without even saying hello to me, she frantically pulled out her phone. She called our mom, screaming into the receiver, "You need to get here, now." Less than 20 minutes after Chloe's frantic phone call, a car screeched into my driveway. My mom and dad scrambled out, looking panicked as if they expected to find the place on fire or Chloe in physical danger. Instead, they stopped dead in their tracks on the cobblestone walkway, staring up at the grand, sweeping estate. Their mouths hung open in absolute disbelief as they took in the manicured gardens, the towering stone pillars, and the sheer scale of the historic property. Chloe stood by the front door, still visibly shaken, pointing inside like she had just seen a ghost. When they walked into the sprawling kitchen, their panic instantly morphed into intense suspicion and defensive anger. My mom didn't ask how I was, nor did she congratulate me. Instead, she slammed her purse onto the custom quartzite island and demanded, "Emily, what on earth is the meaning of this? Whose house is this? What kind of illegal scheme have you gotten yourself mixed up in?" Chloe chimed in, her voice shrill with jealousy. "There is absolutely no way a dusty contractor bought this place. You must have taken out millions in predatory loans just to spite me. You've completely ruined your financial life." I remained perfectly calm, leaning against the counter as I poured hot water into 4 porcelain teacups. Seeing their arrogant superiority crumble into ugly, bitter envy was incredibly satisfying. My dad just paced the floor, staring at the high-end finishes, desperately looking for a flaw. They had spent years comfortably looking down on me, and now, standing in the middle of my masterpiece, their minds simply couldn't handle the reality that the black sheep had completely outgrown them. I let the silence stretch for a moment before setting down the teapot and placing a thick manila folder directly on the island. "I haven't ruined anything, Chloe," I said smoothly, sliding the documents toward my dad. "In fact, I don't owe a single dime on this property. The deed is completely clear, and the house is entirely paid off." My dad snatched up the paperwork, his eyes scanning the official estate auction records and the final property releases. His hands started to tremble as the financial reality sank in. Because I had the contracting expertise, I had purchased a severely undervalued asset and multiplied its net worth 10 times over without paying a dime in inflated labor costs. But I wasn't finished turning the tables. I looked directly at my sister, whose face was morphing from anger to pure desperation. "You see, Chloe, while you were busy bragging about your $2 million suburban mansion, you forgot that I actually know how the construction and banking industries operate." I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a calm, clinical whisper. "I also know that Mom and Dad heavily subsidized your down payment with a massive, high-interest private loan against their own retirement fund, a loan that your corporate salary is currently struggling to cover." Chloe choked back a sob, quickly looking away as my mom went completely pale. They had built a fragile house of cards based on borrowed luxury and false success, using it as a weapon to humiliate me just 7 days ago. Now, the truth was laid bare on the marble counter. I hadn't built this masterpiece out of spite. I had built it out of pure independence. The revelation completely shattered the fragile family dynamic right there in my kitchen. Chloe couldn't bear the sudden, agonizing loss of her golden child status. She grabbed her designer purse and practically fled the house in floods of bitter tears. The illusion of her superior success had evaporated in less than an hour. Once the front door slammed shut, the atmosphere shifted instantly. My mom and dad exchanged a panicked look, suddenly realizing they had deeply alienated the most financially secure child they had. With Chloe gone, my mom's defensive anger miraculously transformed into a nervous, overly sweet smile. She took a step toward me, reaching out to pat my arm. Oh, Emily, sweetie, you know we didn't mean anything by what we said last week. We were just joking around. We are so incredibly proud of your talent. This place is just magnificent. My dad chimed in, suddenly eager to offer his unsolicited advice on property management and tax strategies, acting as if he had been my biggest cheerleader all along. But I wasn't buying their sudden change of heart. I stepped back, cutting off my mom's hand before she could touch me, and looked them both dead in the eye. Don't rewrite history, I said, my voice steady and cold. You didn't see value in my hard work when I was covered in sawdust, and I won't let you minimize the disrespect you showed me now that it has paid off. You are welcome to visit as family, but the days of looking down on me are officially over. Sitting out on the expansive stone patio of my gorgeous new home, watching the sunset dip below the historic tree line, I finally felt a deep sense of peace. The heavy burden of constantly seeking my family's validation had completely evaporated. I didn't need their praise to know what my two hands were capable of building. They thought they could look down on me forever, but hard work speaks louder than empty words. What would you have done if your family treated you this way? There are incredible stories on the screen right now that I know you'll